So, how many units do you currently own and manage?
So we
Yeah.
currently have 17 units under management.
It was like we never skipped a beat. We're
Yeah.
still texting every day. We're calling each other every day. We're in communication with our property managers, our real estate agents, and our contractors. That allows us to invest from a distance.
We actually have two different property management teams, but I think the property management team was probably the biggest factor in helping us grow and develop.
What I understand, both of you are not local. So, tell us about your location. So, where are you located and how do you manage these properties? What advice would you give to our listeners? Should I do it? Should I not do it? How should I invest? So, what kind of advice will you give? Hello and welcome to today's podcast for Bigger Life Podcast, the podcast where we deep dive into real estate and associated strategy. Today we have not one but two awesome guests. Sam and Joe are real estate partners who focus on small to medium family space. They have built a solid portfolio, raised money for syndication. Hey Sam, hey Joe, how are you guys doing?
Hey, Ray,
Doing,
we're doing well, man. Thanks for having us on.
doing great, yeah. We really appreciate you having us come on your show. We're super excited to discuss all things real estate investing.
So Sam and Joe, can you help us? How did you guys two guys met?
Yeah, so Sam and I met back in college. We played soccer together we met a few years before. I'm a year older than him, so we met outside of it knowing that Sam was kind of an incoming freshman.
Oh yeah.
And from there, we played on the same soccer team for 4 years. We were really good friends throughout my 3 years there. And then Sam had one more year extra after that. And we just liking to each other now, maybe not so much. But we played on a team together, and from there we just kind of kindled a friendship. And after college, then we decided, hey, we kind of are like-minded individuals. We both really want to invest in real estate, and we kind of dove in head first.
Awesome. So soccer brought you together and now you are into real estate. How did the idea for real estate kind of really started, right? So did you see any kind of investment that kind of intrigued one of you and you said, yeah, this is the right investment. Let me take it to the other one. So how did it all happen?
So I think it really started. Joe and I interned together at the mortgage company that Joe still works at today as a loan officer. But as we had an internship there together, we started to recognize the power of buying property, and from there, Joe, of course, he returned to work there, still does today. Um, but that sort of that niche of investment was really put forefront in our minds, and as we started to look for ways to generate passive income after graduating from university, we really fell heavily on the real estate investing. And Joe actually gave me for a birthday gift the year after I graduated a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I still have, and that was the final spark where we both decided, okay, let's start doing this. Let's look into buying property together. Let's look into generating some passive income and developing a partnership.
Yeah, to add on to that, like Sam said, I became a loan officer. I was learning the ins and outs of lending, how to build credit, different loan programs, FHA versus conventional. And as I was helping people buy properties, I realized that we could do this too. And it kind of just started off as texts here and there, back and forth to each other, like, hey, I just listened to this podcast episode, or I just read this book. This seems really viable. We feel like we can really do this. We feel like we can really build generational wealth for our families and have financial freedom. So it kind of started off slow, and then it started to snowball as we started to get more and more deals. And then we kind of just pulled the trigger. Both we had our first investments were separate. So Sam bought a single family investment property. I bought a single family primary residence that I did kind of like a 2 year flip on. So we did those separately. We shared notes and each other's experiences. And then in, I believe, 21, we bought our first duplex together. And then we kind of hit the ground running from there.
Interesting times, right? So first of all, that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has changed so many people's lives.
Oh yeah.
And if somebody has not read it, I highly recommend them to go ahead and take a read on
So
it.
funny you say that. I just recommended to a couple people who have invested in our syndications, which I know we'll get to. But I just recommended they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I got texts yesterday saying how influenced they felt by it and how life changing it was. So
It is.
yeah,
Actually, I gifted my kids a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. So
Amazing.
early on,
yeah,
they can make a sense of what's assets versus liabilities.
exactly. Yeah.
And my son was, and then sometimes we'll kind of do this little game where, okay, what is this? Is this an asset or liability? And my little one, he will play, that's liability. Yeah, that's the right one.
Yeah. I like it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I
That's
mean, you got
great.
to start them young, and they don't teach this in school, unfortunately, which is why Sam and I have built our syndication to be able to teach other people who are investing with us exactly what we were doing, exactly how we're able to make money. And although, real estate is very far from easy, it's definitely a hard industry to be in. It's not something that only a select few people can do. I truly believe that most people can invest in real estate if they take the time to learn it,
Yeah.
get a mentor, learn from experience. You might make a few mistakes, or you're definitely going to make mistakes. But I do believe that no matter what your intelligence level is, whether you're a school dropout or you're a PhD student, anybody can invest in real estate. And
Agreed.
it's just a matter of having the motivation to.
Yeah, that's the beauty of real estate, right? It's a very forgivable asset class. If you make a mistake, it will autocorrect in like 10 or 20 years if you hold it long enough. And with watching these podcasts or educating yourself and networking with the right kind of people, it helps you avoid those costly mistakes in the first place. Even still, if you made a mistake here, a little bit here or there, it's forgivable.
Yeah.
It's very forgiving asset. It's not like stocks, right?
No, sorry to cut you off, but I think it's very important to make sure that you separate the people who are teaching real estate in a get rich quick scheme fashion versus people who are teaching it in a way that you're building long-term wealth. People learning from Bigger Pockets or from yourself, Ray, or from Joe and I. People who are preaching that real estate is a long-term game, and if you invest with a long-term mindset, you will build wealth. But I think sometimes people get caught up in the flashiness of the get rich quick scheme side of things, which I personally think is a little disappointing when people are preaching that sort of information, because it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, long
Yeah.
term is the key here, right?
Yeah.
So if you hold it long term, you will build both wealth and cash flow through
Yeah.
the process. And your mistakes can be forgiven in that process.
Hmm.
But if you're looking at to get rich overnight kind of scheme, then real estate is a very, very costly game to
Yes.
enter into because just your expenses to buy and sell, look at it like from your closing cost standpoint.
Hmm.
So that alone could run up till maybe 12 to 15%, right? So in that sense, yes, you have to be long term and definitely you have to learn it from the right people who
Hmm.
are not doing it for the money, but doing it for the passion to teach it to the other people and are in for the long term game. And they also talk to you about not only the rewards, but also the risk that kind of comes along with it. Because it's
Yeah.
important to know the risk that are along with it.
To your point, Ray, I always make the analogy that real estate or just really just investments in general are educated risks or educated gambles. I hate to say the word gamble because obviously that's like, putting $100,000 on black. It's not the case, but it's an educated gamble. There are things that can go wrong. But like you were saying earlier, if you listen to the podcast, if you read the books, if you listen to your mentors, you can kind of put guardrails for yourself. I make the analogy of like you're not going to get into a Ferrari and drive 120 miles across a bridge and think that you're going to be okay. That's very high risk and very low reward. Chances are you're going to crash. But if you get into, a Toyota Camry and you drive 50 miles per hour down the you're most likely not going to crash. You're going to get to your destination. Yeah, there's definitely still risk there. Every time you get into a car, there's, an accident can happen, things that are out of your control. But for the most part, as long as you're setting those guardrails for yourself, you're going to be okay.
Absolutely. And then there are things that are outside of your control: economy, interest rates, employment, unemployment. Those kind of things are outside of your control. But again, as educated you are, you know the risk, and then you the potential to absorb those risks. So those are in place. what I understand, both of you are not local. So tell us about your location. So where are you located, and how do you manage these properties?
Yeah, great question. So Joe and I are both from the greater New York City area originally. I am still in New York, and we invest in Pennsylvania. I'll let Joe share where he lives himself. But we do invest in Pennsylvania, which when we first started out and when we were both in this greater New York City area, um, that was about a medium term distance investing, right? Where we weren't local, but it wasn't like we were a plane ride away. We could get there in about 2.5 hours by car if there was an emergency. Um, and at first, when we started buying stuff together and when I had my single family in the area, we were self-managing. So, we had boots on the ground people, right? We had made connections with handyman, plumbers, contractors, electricians, etc. But we were still the ones coordinating all of that stuff. And if necessary, we drove down to take a look at stuff. Um, Nowadays, with Joe not being local, and the portfolio growing to the point where it's too much to manage, just the two of us, we do have a local property management team who takes care of all that stuff.
Yeah, like Sam said, I'm originally from New York. Since then, moved to South Carolina in an area. I've been here about 2 years, but it was great that we were both near each other to start as we were building our boots on the ground, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we took a bunch of trips out there to look at inspections. We did some DIY projects on our first property together. We, like sanded down some cabinets, refinished them, put some epoxy on a countertop just to kind of spruce it up and give it a little TLC. So that was kind of cool experience, and also allowed us to invest in a market that's not as expensive as New York with
Yeah.
such high taxes as New York. And now that we do have the boots in the ground, we have those systems in place. I was able to move down here to Charleston, and it was like we never skipped a beat. We're
Yeah.
still texting every day, we're calling each other every day. We're in communication with our property managers, our real estate agents, and our lenders and our contractors. That allows us to invest from a distance without having to physically be there. I think out of the properties that we have now, I've only seen one of them in person. It's possible, and Sam's going to be, not to throw your business out there, Sam, but Sam's going to be taking a trip where he's
Yeah.
going to be out of the country, and same thing. It's going to be business as usual. It's not anything's going to change from it.
Yeah. What's funny is really the only thing that changed when Joe moved is our like ability to see each other on a friendship level.
Yeah.
Besides that, I mean, realistically, it's not like we were living together when we were both in New York. We were still mostly doing everything via phone, via text. Um, when Joe moved to South Carolina, it really it stayed on that level. The only thing that changed was the social aspect.
Yeah, I miss you,
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
awesome. So what you really talked about is that you guys have put systems in place which kind of
Yeah.
elevated you to become like the CEO, where you can take the vacation, which a lot of real estate investors are not able to do. So they still have a lot of, hands into each aspect of it operationally, where they're still into the business and not on the business. So can you talk about what strategies or you have been doing, and what struggles did you have to begin with, and how did you reach to this space, to this level where you can say, okay, I can take a vacation and let
Yeah.
let the business operate it by itself?
So I think it definitely took time, right? The point you make about systems in place, I mean that was really a lot of not trial and error, but there was a bit of a learning curve where you're testing out somebody new who and it's a lot of trust to hand over this portfolio that you've built to somebody else to take, to manage it. And we vetted people. We actually have two different property management teams for different areas of the portfolio because they're not exactly all close together. It's throughout a county, or two counties actually. So one handles one area, the other handles the other area. But it definitely took some time to build up that trust. I mean, for a while we were doing everything from tenant management to maintenance scheduling, on top of trying to grow the portfolio and make contacts with agents, lenders, see new property. And once we realized that we could really focus on bigger picture stuff if we just took out the time that we were spending on a daily basis doing tenant management, move in, move outs, new lease up, maintenance requests. Once we were able to remove that from our plate, we were able to focus on acquiring more property, um, raising money for syndications, things that were going to help the business grow while also saving us time.
Yeah, and to emphasize one point that Sam mentioned was trust, and also
Yeah.
to add on to that, delegation.
Yeah.
We had to delegate this work to our team that's the boots on the ground, and we also had to trust them that they're going to get the job done. Now, maybe sometimes it is a little bit of a blind trust, but over time you work into it and you learn the pros and cons, or I guess the strengths and weaknesses of your team that's down there, and you adjust accordingly. And I would say that if you try to do everything yourself, you're just going to be, like trying to run in the sand, basically. It's much harder to do everything yourself. You can't be the contractor and the property manager and the realtor all in one. There are people I'm sure that do that, but they're not growing as quickly as they would if they had those people doing those jobs and they could focus on just growth themselves. Like you mentioned, Ray, working on your business, not working in your business.
So right now, what does your team look like? So can you walk us through your team structure?
Yeah, for sure. So at the moment, we have a real estate agent team of two. They work together, where one of them is kind of like the more experienced overseeing real estate agent. She's been doing this for 20, 25 years. She gives us a lot of advice on negotiations and big picture. She kind of has her protege that will go around and tour properties for us and will send us like 20 videos a week. So that actually allows us to see these properties without having to physically be. Younger agent has the hustle and has the drive to be able to go out and tour these properties for us so that we can look at them, decipher what type of offer we want to make, and then she draws up the offer and then we send it in. So that's one aspect of the team. Then we have a property management team that's collecting the rents, dealing with tenant issues. If there's a emergency in the middle of the night, they're the ones that are taking the phone call. Maybe the heat went out and it's during the winter. They're also posting notices for past due tenants. So that's, I think Sam and I, that was when we started. Probably the biggest headache was dealing with the tenants and having to like deal with, who's paid, who's not on time, who's a repeat offender. All right, we got to text them, we got to follow up, they're not answering us. All of that takes so much tedious time, and then that takes away us from the growth aspect of it. And then we have a contractor and a lender as well, which I'm Sam, if you want to go over that.
Yeah, I mean, the contractor team that we met, that we use, we met through the property manager that we use. So that was, when you meet good people, then they pass you along to other good people. And the lender we use, we actually found via Bigger Pockets, which was great. And now we're in communication with him basically on a weekly basis as he's helping us out to buy more property. Um, but I think that the property management team was probably the biggest factor in helping us grow and develop. Where, for example, right, like Joe was saying, we used to be not, knocking on doors virtually, meaning we're texting and calling for late rent, or if a notice needs to be filed, we would have to, ask a favor of like a real estate agent or somebody to go post a notice or something like that. Or even for good tenants, if they needed a maintenance request, we're now the ones handling all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas now, 11 a.m. Thursday morning, excuse me, we have a meeting with our property manager who tells us everything that happened that week, and then we can be involved in the big picture decisions. Like, okay, hey, for example, let's say unit is not renting out, right? We have a vacant unit that we're trying to rent out. Do we want to raise the price? Do you want to offer a rent concession? What would you like to do? A promotion? And then we can offer our big picture thoughts on that idea. And then it's, hey, we have this rehab coming up. Do you want to go with this, or that? And we can offer our big picture, thoughts on that one and go over the pricing. But we come into the meeting and the property manager has all her notes and everything laid out for us, where we can spend that 45-minute meeting actually getting a ton done instead of constantly texting back and forth and random calls throughout the week. Now it's so much more organized, and we're spending a lot less time and spending our time a lot more efficiently.
And especially because we both still work W-2 jobs. Who knows, maybe, in 5, 10 years from now, if we decide that we want to do real estate full time 100% of the time, maybe we won't need the property manager, or maybe we just need them to step in for certain things that we don't want to handle. But as of right now, we're trying to grow our portfolio, and it allows us to be able to work our day jobs and also grow this portfolio. We wouldn't have time, we wouldn't be able to do all these, daily tasks and dealing with the tenants. There is a cost to the property manager. It's well worth it. It pays for itself tenfold.
So, Joe, do you still work in mortgage?
Yes, I'm still a loan officer. I'm licensed in 12 states.
Great. And Sam, so what are you working into?
So I actually recently left my job at Amazon about 2 months ago now. And now I do work on a 1099 basis as like a property management consultant here in New York, which is interesting enough. Yeah.
The property management company that you have hired, or the two property management companies that you have, do they send in their own contractors whenever something breaks, or they kind of piggyback on your contractors to get the work done?
For the most part, they send in their own contractors, but it's almost like a built-in relationship in a sense, where we chose our property manager for a reason, because we like them, we trust them, we thought that they'd be easy to work with, and we believe that they're going to get the job done. And if they have a contractor that they use that they trust, then now we're building that relationship with that contractor. We have our Rolodex of people that we can call as well. But if it's already that built-in systems that they have, it only makes it easier on us, because if the contractor and the property manager already have that relationship, then again, talking about systems, it's a built-in system that they have. Now, if that contractor can't do a specific job, or maybe they're just really busy that week and there's an emergency that, somebody needs to get out there and fix it immediately, we then go to our kind of list of contractors that we send out there.
So that was about the team. Now let's talk about your niche. So your niche is small multifamily, like anywhere from 2 to 10 units. Why small multifamily?
Yeah, I think we saw less of a barrier to entry in that niche. Of course, single family is the bedrock of America, but we've realized that vacancy is the silent killer of real estate. So if you have a single family property and that person moves out, that's your customer. It's weird to say it that way. But in your business, that's your customer. Your tenant is your customer. So if you have a single family residence and somebody moves out, now you have zero customers, and it's very high risk. Not saying that people can't make money in single family. They do every day. But especially when you're starting out, if you don't have a portfolio of 100 single families and you only have two, one person moves out, you just lost 50% of your revenue. So we wanted to kind of focus on the 2 to 10 unit, where if we can get a quadplex, 4 people live in it or 4 families live in it, or one family moves out, at least we're still getting 75% of the revenue. At least we're still getting a good bulk of the money that's coming in. And that kind of lowers our risk, because the vacancy is what hurts you the most. You can run your numbers perfectly. It can be a home run deal. The numbers looks great on paper and you can think you're going to make a ton of money. But if you can't rent out those units, then it's not really worth the paper that it's written on. And conversely, I think that eventually we'd love to get into larger multifamily, but it is a little bit more of a barrier to entry. Those are obviously more expensive the bigger of the property you get, depending on the market. And, they're harder to find, at least, we haven't really dug too deep into it, where they're not really listed on the MLS or Zillow, or there's specific commercial agents that usually have these pocket listings, or maybe even industrial real estate agents, where you kind of have to search in a different niche, in a different market, to have a whole different team. For the most part, these agents that do single families also do 2 to 10 units. So it was kind of less of a barrier to entry, where we could get in, still buy properties at an affordable rate, and also mitigate our risk by having more units per building.
I would also say that one big part of it is the competition piece, right? Where in the single family, you're not only competing against potential single family investors, but also against uh, people who are looking for their, familial home, people who are
Great
looking
point.
to put roots down. Whereas when you get above, maybe not in the 15 unit range, but let's say now we're talking about 25 units and up, you're probably competing with some institutional money as well, where um, banks who are, have more money than just Joe and I together,
Yeah.
obviously, are coming in and buying these big apartment buildings that, they can afford to overpay a bit. They can afford to outbid you because a financial institution where, well, excuse me, whereas when you're in that like 2 to 10 unit range, you're really only competing with other similar sized investors, right? You're not competing with hotshot investors, the Grant Cardones of the world. You're not competing with those kind of people. You're competing with other investors like ourselves, which while those people are competitive and intelligent, it's at least just a smaller pool of people that are looking to bid on the same property as you.
Dan, that's a great point on the single family too, that a single family or just a property in general is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. If somebody's
Yeah.
trying to set down family roots and buy in a specific school district, our numbers for an investment purpose may only work if that property is worth 280. Where somebody who really wants a district with their family, really wants to, be 2 blocks away from their mother-in-law or whatever it is, they might pay 320, 350 because it's that valuable to them. It's actually worth it for them. Where for us, we need to be at 280 or else it's not going to work. So when we're investing in 2 to 10 units, chances are, some families might do a 2 unit, they'll do a house hack, live in one unit, rent out the other. But there's a small chance that a family like that is going to invest in the 6 unit. They're more looking for their own space.
Absolutely. And you're right about that competition on the single family and also on the large multifamily side from the institutional side. Even in the single family space, there is, at least in Atlanta, I mean, we read about it a lot where
Yeah.
there are institutions who are buying 10,000, 20,000 homes on a daily basis. But for whatever reason, I think this small multifamily is a perfect niche that you guys have come up with, which only has competition from like-minded investors, but you are not getting that competition from, hey, I'm going to live in here into a quadplex. I mean, there are far in between people who would do that, maybe just 5 to 10% who will do the house hacking. And institutional investors are obviously not looking at this asset class. They are looking at 25, 50 units and plus.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So that's fantastic. So it really sounds like you have managed to carve out your own niche. So how many units do you currently own and manage?
So we
Yeah.
currently have 17 units under management. Now, 11 of them are owned just by the two of us. 6 of them are owned under a syndication, of which we own 25% together. So I guess technically 12.5% each, but we loop everything in together. And then we have 4 units under contract currently as well. So 4 more.
You started in 2021, which is interesting time, right?
Yeah.
And the interest rates are low, but there's a lot of competition. And versus right now, the market is where the you don't have as much competition, but the interest rates are high. So how do you see and compare the two markets? And are you still and you're still able to find properties that are still making sense at those numbers? So can you walk us through the different time frames?
Like you mentioned, Ray, there was a lot of competition, and we kind of had to get a little bit more creative and make the deal sweeter sometimes for the seller, whether it be a quicker close time or asking for inspections for informational purposes only. I definitely do not recommend waiving inspection. I mean, you as a realtor, I'm sure, you say the same thing to your buyers, unless you have a background in construction. So definitely get an inspection, but we said our inspection for informational purposes only. We tell the seller, hey, look, we're not gonna nickel and dime you, not gonna try to, ask you for a $20,000 credit after the inspection. We're just doing this so that we know what we're dealing with, and then we'll move forward from there with the property if we see that it's sufficient. So we kind of had to get a little bit creative with how we approach these listings in order to weed out the competition. And then I would say fast forward to now, like you mentioned, there is less competition, but it's harder to make the deals work. I think Sam and I analyze probably, I don't know, Sam, how many, 5 to 10 deals a week?
More.
More than
Used
that.
to, yeah.
And a lot of them don't work. But some of them we're seeing pop up where the seller might be in a distressed situation where they have to get rid of the property. And we're kind of just staying patient and staying true to our numbers. We analyze a ton of deals. If most of them don't work, we don't get discouraged. We know that the right one is around the corner. So we're staying patient. And that one that pops up, then we jump on it, and maybe there's only one other offer on it, if that.
Yeah. I think another crucial part is getting a little creative, right? We like to find properties that have either a value add or like a revenue add possibility. So value add is a pretty common term that real estate investors use, where how can I improve the quality of the property? But the revenue add side of things is how can I add an extra unit, or how can I make this three-bedroom unit into 4 bedrooms? And how can I maybe turn this lawn area into parking that I can charge for? How can I get coin operated laundry in the building? Just ways that you can increase the revenue that the building is generating. You sometimes have to think a little bit out of the box. I'll give you a great example. Is we bought a 7-bed 3 bath triplex that we turned into a 9-bed 4 bath triplex. It's still only 3 units, but now 2 of the units have additional bedrooms and one has an additional bathroom. That now the rent on that unit, those 2 units, is higher, and it's generating more revenue. So I think it's ways to get creative in terms of increasing the revenue on a property to make a deal work.
You have to
Absolutely.
see the value where others don't. Sorry, go ahead, Red. All right.
No, I was just saying that that's right. I mean, you have to see where you can add the revenue. A lot of people don't think about that. They are just running after value add, just
Yeah.
upgrades. I myself, I'm working on a property right now where it was a 3 bedroom, 1 bath. Now we are renovating it down to the studs, but it's gonna be 4 bed, 2 bath. So nobody's gonna come back and say, "Hey, it's still the same square footage, but it's gonna be advertised more like as 4 bed, 2 bath."
Yeah.
So the rent on that, I believe, um, I don't know, I still need to run the perfect numbers, but at least $200 to $300 extra per month, right? So that 300 times 12,
Yeah.
that's your revenue,
Yeah.
and it does not cost me any, cost me a little bit extra, but maybe pays for itself in the first year.
Yeah. And not to
Yeah.
mention when you go to sell or refinance, the 4-bed 2 bath will be worth more than the home was originally purchased for.
Absolutely. So you have created the wealth as well as the cash flow.
Exactly. Yeah.
So interestingly, you also mentioned about coin operator laundry and stuff that you have added into your unit. So can you walk us through? So how did that kind of look like? How's that experience?
That was actually, we have not done that yet. That was actually just a suggestion that I was giving in terms of generating more income for a property. It is something we have 100% looked into doing, but unfortunately has not worked out yet.
Okay, great. Now that you have 17 units, right? Some that you own yourself and some that you have in the syndication. Can you walk us down through the numbers? What kind of revenues per month you're generating from all these units, and what's your cash flow kind of looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now our gross rents are just over the 4 properties that we have, the 17 units, about 17,000 a month, which equates to just over 200,000 in gross revenue per year. And I emphasize gross because, obviously, like you mentioned, Ray, that's not true cash flow. We have to factor in, like we mentioned before, paying the property manager, paying the more expenses. I want to say between the 4 properties, our mortgages, including taxes, including insurance, is right around $10,000 a month. And a few of them are at high interest rates. So when we then go to refinance, it's only going to add more cash flow to the properties. So that's kind of what Sam and I's philosophy has been. We're not reinventing the wheel by any means, but if we can find properties that either cash flow a ton, of course, the more the better, but even if they cash flow a little bit, when we're factoring in maintenance, vacancy, all that stuff, when we then go to refinance when the rates drop, whenever that may be, it's only going to make even more money.
Interesting. Now that we know that you are doing syndication, small syndications, right? So walk us through your syndication deals that you have done, and I think you have done one deal, right?
Yeah, so we actually just raised money for the second syndication, that 4 units that I told you that we said were under contract. That is actually for that second fundraise. But those deals, we've approached basically with the same philosophy and mindset that we approach our own personal portfolio with. Now, what we realized and why we decided to fundraise for those deals is because we recognized we had so many people who, were hearing from us or through the grapevine about what we were doing and how we were investing in real estate. And so many people were texting us either to try and partner up or to try and learn so they could do it themselves. We realized that we could kind of do a win-win benefit for everybody by not only raising the money and buying a deal altogether that we knew we knew we would have more purchasing power and more ability to make a bigger deal happen, but also we take the time to educate people in the process once they've invested. Even people who attended the presentation to get involved and decided to sit out this round, we still happily educate and pass information along so that they're able to learn. So I think it's a dual benefit of investing all together and also helping other people learn so that they can do it themselves.
So the deal that you are under contract right now, let's walk through that. So what's the deal size on that one?
So it's an interesting property. It is a 4 unit property, but it's student housing. So it's actually rented out in a rent by the bedroom for student housing situations. So while it is 4 units, four leases, each bedroom is actually charged the exact same amount of rent, and so the leases are divided by that. Excuse me, the leases are drawn up that way in terms of the price per month, because some of the units have 4 bedrooms, some have three. But the reason it's perfect for that sort of structure is because while it is only 4 units, it has 13 bedrooms, which is a great way to increase revenue in a by using that per bedroom structure rather than just tackling it as a whole unit.
Yeah. And what's the your purchase price on that?
That one I believe is 485,
Yeah.
485,000.
485,000.
And I believe that the yearly gross rents currently are 59,000 per year.
Yeah.
But because it's student housing, all these students need to sign their leases for the next school year. So the seller actually already has signed leases, and I believe they bumped it up. Total will be what, Sam, like 63 to 65,000?
I think it's around 64. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So that'll be, we already have those gross rents locked in for the next school year. So anyone who follows the 1% rule, basically looking at what the gross revenue is, if that's 1% of the property value or the purchase price, it doesn't mean automatically buy it. Obviously, you have to keep investigating the other expenses, utilities, the interest rates, but that might be your napkin math or your chicken scratch math to begin with to say, okay, now it's worth investigating a little bit more because it meets that 1% rule.
And are you going to raise any debt on this deal, or is it completely funded by the syndication?
So great question. So the syndication, we still take a mortgage. We do use financing to purchase the property. So while we're raising money for these syndications, we still do use traditional financing. So we have to look for deals that we are confident will not only cash flow to pay the financial institution that we're borrowing money from back, but also make sure our investors hit their return as well.
Yeah, and we also are big fans of not over leveraging yourself,
Yeah.
and also not your cash down. You got to have reserves. You got to have things are going to pop up that are unforeseen, whether it be a new boiler, a new roof that you didn't expect to have to put in. So we want to be conservative where we're going to put in a good chunk of the cash that we raise, but we're going to keep a bunch for reserves. And then we might even keep some to invest in a second property for the same round of syndication, depending on exactly how this first deal goes with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now that we know that you raise capital, can you talk a little bit about how you have approached raising capital with, you know, from the investors?
Like Sam kind of mentioned earlier, we had all these people reaching out to us. They saw what we were doing. We kind of mentioned, what we were doing to a few people here and there, and so many people shared that same enthusiasm for real estate as us, and they were asking us a ton of questions. How did you guys get into it? How did you learn it? What is it that you think that I should do? And we're giving everybody as much advice as we possibly can, but we also realize that most of these people are way too busy in their day-to-day lives to be able to listen to the podcasts or read the books or buy that first deal for themselves. The people that we raise money from are lawyers, doctors, people that are just so bogged down with their day-to-day lives that they don't actually have the time to do it, or at least it would just take away so much from their family, take actual work, that we said, hey, if we have all these people reaching out to us anyways, and we want to continue to grow the portfolio more than what we can just personally put in money wise, let's raise money from these friends and families, and be able to grow quicker, and be able to teach everyone as we go. So that's kind of how we approached it, where we made it a learning experience where we're teaching everybody, hey, this is what we're doing. You can invest your money with us and you don't have to lift a finger. You're completely passive. You don't have to make any phone calls. You don't have to sign any, you sign paperwork in the beginning, but other than that, you're not having to sign offers and stuff like that. So we kind of approached it as an educational piece for all the people that have been reaching out to us anyways, saying that they were interested.
And one thing that we do to basically get everybody more involved and also make sure that everybody is has their who's invested has their voice heard and is a part of the process is everybody in the syndication has voting rights based off of how much ownership they have in the group. And so when major equity decisions come along, like to do a cash out refinance or to potentially sell the property, Joe and I reach out and ask everybody for their vote. And so the majority will rule. But the way, Joe and I will, of course, advise with, based on our expertise, what we think should happen. But at the same time, if the vote doesn't go our way, the vote doesn't go our way. It's everybody is involved and everybody is a part of the company in that sense so that, everybody's voice is heard.
Now, this is interesting because normally in syndications, the syndicator or the GP is kind of making the call,
Yeah.
and the limiters kind of follow, whether it's a capital raise or whatsoever. So limited partners, they just kind of have to follow whatever the GP has said. So instead, what you guys are doing is you are giving that power back to the limited and saying, okay, we'll go through the voting and let the votes decide what action should be taken on some major decisions. Not obviously, a small maintenance that needs to happen. So you
Yeah.
will go ahead and fix that boiler or whatever needs to be fixed.
Correct.
But whether we should reinvest this money or pay back to the investors or do a refi, so those kind of decisions, you're going back to your investors.
Yeah, so we give power to the people again, right? These fundraisers are through family and friends. Where it's all people that we know personally. We want them to be involved in the process. We want them learning. Anytime that we've had to have a decision like this, Joe and I have given our opinion and it's been followed typically because people trust that we know what we're doing, which is why they invested in the first place. Um, but at the same time, we want everybody to make sure that their voice is heard and that they're involved in the process.
This is awesome. This is great. I think it would be awesome if more and more syndicators will do that. So syndications are a great vehicle for people to invest in, but sometimes we have seen some bad apples,
Yeah.
and that kind of brings bad name to the whole industry. And if everybody was doing the same thing, where everybody is giving voting rights to the investors, I think that's an awesome, awesome thing where everybody feels empowered.
Yeah. I think there's a major emphasis on the friends and family part for our syndications, right? We care about all the people who have invested. We know them very, very well. We want them to succeed. They want us to succeed. It's a very, very, it's almost like a real estate investing community in the sense that, we're all going to grow together. Joe and I are the ones with the expertise and who are the ones who are doing the legwork. But at the same time, we want so badly to bring a return to our investors because we know that, it'll A, lead to more investment down the line, but B, it'll lead to them taking their own steps in real estate investing, which is also one of the main reasons that we started to do this.
Great. On the next segment, we ask our guests to talk to us about our interesting real estate story. We all have different experiences, so there's always something interesting, right?
Oh
Yeah.
boy, it depends on what direction Joe and I want to go with
Yeah,
this one.
exactly.
Well, we can have two different stories. How about that?
Okay.
One
Okay.
from
Do we
you
want
and
to
one from you.
should we do one bad, one good?
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, what do you,
Sam, you do the pipe burst story or
oh,
the bad tenant story. It's
I'll,
actually the same property, so
I'll do the, I'll do the Piper story.
yeah.
So, as anyone who's listening can now figure out what I'm about to talk about, we did have a burst pipe. This is on the second deal that Joe and I ever did together. And, if anybody out there is listening has gone through that process, or Ray, if you've gone through it yourself, it is an absolute nightmare. It's horrible. And unfortunately, it happened to Joe and I on a hard money deal that we did together, where, for those who are listening that don't know, a hard money deal is where you get a loan to do the purchase and rehab of a property, which you will then refinance the property at a higher value and pay back that initial loan and get yourself a traditional 30, 20-year mortgage. And we were almost complete on the rehab. I would say it was about 95% complete. Really excited, right? We just pulled off our first hard money deal together. It's our second investment together. And, we're so excited about refinancing, paying that loan back, getting our cash out as well, recycling that money and buying something new. And we get a text, actually. I just got a I believe we got a group chat message, like the two of us and the contractor we were working with at a time, and it was just a video of water flowing out of a broken pipe into the living room of one of the units. And of course, I'm like, what am I looking at here? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on? And turns out that unfortunately, basically over the winter, I don't know exactly how, but Joe, what happened, right? The gas
Yeah,
company. Oh,
yeah,
yes, yes.
the heat cut out
The
at
heat
the
cut out.
worst possible time.
The heat cut out and the pipes froze. It was in January. The pipes froze, and then the contractor had actually turned the water off for us because we didn't want to be paying the water bill at the time. But in his mind, he came back and he thought that the property was ready for showing. And it was ready for showing. We were putting all the utilities back on, and unfortunately, the heat, which had been on because they were doing work in the property, the heat had cut out, and the contractor came by and flipped the water switch back on. The pipes froze, and then he came back 2 days later, and there was basically a sheet of ice across the floor of the entire property. Luckily, the top unit was saved. So one of three was left okay, and then two of three were completely destroyed. We had to have Roto-Rooter come in there. The contractor said to get into the door, it was so frozen that he had to use a crowbar to pry open the door. Um, and then started the process of, you know, fixing everything. And it cost Joe and I tens of thousands of dollars. We had to not only get rid of the ice, right? Then Roto-Rooter had to come in, treat all, remove all the wood, treat the wood for mold. Then the contractor comes back in and, redoes all the rehab. I mean, it was, as you can imagine, an absolute nightmare. The reason why we like telling this story is because Joe and I, we got that message. There was never a doubt of, us throwing in the towel and quitting and saying, we'll just sell it for a loss and stop this real estate investing stuff. We powered through. We figured out some creative ways to finance it. We got like a short-term loan from a local. Yeah. So we got that short-term loan to use to finance the initial work because it had to be paid in a lump sum, which we then paid back to the financial institution as quickly as we could, and we eventually were able to finish that rehab, get it leased up, and refinance that that deal and get pay back the hard money loan. And now we have a traditional mortgage on that property and it's cash flowing. But those 3 to 4 months were hard. That was a lot of
Yeah.
hard work, and it was a brutal gut punch. We had so much momentum. We had just bought a duplex, done our rehab, cash out refied, used the money to buy the triplex. We're so excited. We had just successfully done the exact same thing where our momentum is growing and growing, and we're going to keep recycling this money, and then absolute gut punch. So that
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Mentally, it was tough for those few months. But
yeah.
like Sam said, we at no point did we say that we were going to quit because we knew that we were destined to do this. We knew that we could do this and be successful. And to your point earlier, Ray, is that the mistakes that you make, they even out in the long run. In this case, it's still really not the long run yet, but like we're still cash flowing on the property. We were still able to refinance this property that had the pipe burst and still pull some cash out, even on top of all the stuff that we had to pay back. So of course we would have been able to cash out more. So that was the worst part of it. But even so, because we did so well with the renovations and because we bought at the right price, it just
Yeah.
we were able to weasel our way out of it and still continue to grow from there. At that point, we only had 5 units. Now we're up to 17. So as you can see, it didn't really stop us.
I think it's time for a happier one.
Yeah.
It's a great comeback. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned about from
Yeah.
the story, right? And it talks about your strength and your mindset.
Yeah.
And that's a great comeback because for your investors, it's really important to know what kind of personalities you are and what you
Yeah.
have faced before, and you're built for it. You're cut for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What last thing I'll say about this is when we told this to in casual conversation to another investor that we had met, he was like, wow, after a year and a half, 2 years of investing, this is a while back, but he's like, wow, after a year and a half, 2 years of investing, you guys have already seen it all. Like that is a crazy story to go through so early in your career. The silver lining that I think is very good to take away is that, of course, knock on wood, but Joe and I will never allow a mistake like that to happen again. And we would rather have it happen on a 3 unit than a 25 unit down the line. Biggest lesson to anybody listening out there trying to get their first property and you're in the Northeast where it gets cold, make sure your utilities are properly set up.
Yeah. And I also mentor that I was explaining the situation to him. Obviously, we were super bummed. And he was like, look, man, you're paying for your education. It's a hefty bill to pay, but you're paying for your education. You take it on the chin, you learn and you move on from it.
Yeah.
I'd rather, like Sam said, learn this now than learn it when we're at a 25 unit and it costs us 200K to fix all this stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think that makes a lot of sense, the education part of it. And I kind of got a little bit more interested into real estate just because of their water. So my property is set up where it's my primary home, and I was doing house hacking with my basement unit, renting it as
Nice.
Airbnb. I'm in Texas. This is the winter of 22. Yeah, 2 years back. This is the winter of 22. I'm in Texas, and my Airbnb guest texts me, simple text, no message. The roof has collapsed. Okay. And I'm thinking over there, this that the roof from the top, right? And it's a
Yeah.
2-level unit now, that the whole roof, the whole house has collapsed. I'm earthquake here because that's the only way I can think roof
yeah.
has collapsed. Then I asked, can you send me some pictures? And she sent me some pictures. The house is flooded, and the unit had a basement and living room. It's all flooded. All the sheetrock. So what she meant was that the sheetrock from the ceiling, it has collapsed because the water was there, and we were not at home. So, gosh, I don't know. The water was running for how many days because it was collecting into that sheetrock for all that time. But anyways, I asked the guest that we'll cancel her reservation. She can find another accommodation. We'll refund all her monies. So that was the first business to take care of. So she was nice. So she kind of left, and we refunded her monies. Then I had left the keys with my neighbor. I called my neighbor. I'm like, listen, I have this little problem going on. So can you go to my home and find this water shut off and
Yeah.
go and shut off the water? There. Okay. So she went in and she's like, man, your home is flooded. So my master toilet, that pipe burst over there, which not only flooded my main level, my master, closet, the bedroom, the toilet, the bathroom, and then the water kind of seeped in. And downstairs, I had the kitchen. So, well, what are the two main expensive things in a real estate? Kitchen and bathrooms.
Oh,
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, had to deal with mold issues, had to deal with insurance, I mean, a lot of things. But guess what? That learning experience, that's kind of like education that we were talking about,
Yeah.
it brings me into renovations because I had to find creative ways. Okay, because insurance initially they only paid me $18,000. I could not find a contractor who could do all of this for $18,000. Then I had to find my own crews to work on it. I had to go to these mold companies to figure out, okay, how do you do mold removal and things like that. It took us an awful long, like 1 year, to complete the work on that property. I mean, it wasn't huge, but I didn't knew any better. And the insurance, as we think insurance should be helping us, but they don't. And I don't know
Yeah.
any better. And I'm fighting with insurance with these extra codes and whatever. And they are, okay, we'll pay you another 5,000, but that doesn't help. But long story short, I did what I had to do for my property, fixed it up, renovated it. Actually, I renovated it better. It was one bedroom, one bathroom unit, converted it to two bedroom, two bathroom unit. So there were a few things I wanted to do in the kitchen. Now was my chance to do those things in the kitchen. It did not have a laundry, added
Yeah.
a laundry. It did not have a dishwasher, added a dishwasher. So in the process, I learned this, or this stigma about, what if this happens? Because I was a guy who had never even put a nail in the wall. Now I'm
yeah,
doing a
yeah.
renovation here, but that was my learning curve. And from there, I'm into my third remodel right now, down to the studs.
Amazing. That's
Amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
So it happens.
You know, you found someone empathetic with that story, where we know what it's like.
Yeah.
And it's tough, but kudos to you for coming out better on the other side. And that's all you can do, right?
I mean, there were only two choices. The
Yeah.
choice A was to sell the home and
Hmm.
find something else for my primary, deal with this insurance or whatever, as is, and take the losses, as you said.
Yeah.
Or I took it as a learning thing where I was like, okay, let me learn from this. It's going to take me longer, and it did take me long, but I learned so much because I was involved into each and every process. Even though I would hire the right people, like mold remediation test and all that. I think we did it like 3 times. The first time just to make sure how much mold we have, and then the second time after we did the thing and make sure that it's gone. It was gone, but I still waited for another 2 3 weeks just to make sure it does not come
Yeah.
back, right? And did the third test, and it confirmed that there's no mold and all that stuff. Okay, that's when we said, okay, now we can patch up the walls. And then there was still a learning curve because now I'm dealing with this permit thing,
Yeah.
with the county. So, anyways, I learned a lot.
Yeah, wow. No, thanks for sharing that. That was a
Yeah.
that was a great story. I'm sure people will get a lot of learning lessons from that.
So let's talk about a good story. I think
Yeah.
Joe, you have a good one, right?
Yeah, good story. Sam, you think I should do my live and flip or maybe short av from start to finish?
I
Or
think do Short Ave into Edison.
okay, cool. So the first property that Sam and I bought together was a side-by-side two family, a duplex that needed work. It had like green shag carpet, purple and pink walls, um, you know, kind of gross flooring, but all of the 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 skeletal aspects of it, the mechanical aspects of it were in good condition. The heating, the air, the plumbing, the foundation, the roof, the siding, all of that stuff was in great condition, but everything was just kind of like ugly on the inside, which is exactly what we want and what I recommend to people when looking, especially for your first deal, is you want to have good bones but ugly guts. So we found this property and the stuff that Sam and I couldn't do ourselves, like the flooring, maybe like painting the entire units. Obviously, we could have done that ourselves, but being so far away and having to do, let's say, 3,000 square feet worth of painting, we just simply didn't have the time to do. But we had our contractor do those items. And then Sam and I and my fiance, Hannah, went out one weekend to do the kitchen cabinets where we sanded them down, we repainted them, put new hardware, and we did epoxy on the countertops. So it was definitely still, renter grade renovation because we know it's going to get beat up anyways. But it looked really nice. It looked clean. It looked new and attracted top rents. So we had that property. We spruced it up. I think we even had the deck scraped and repainted
Yeah.
so that it gave it like some nice curb appeal. Again, to get higher rents for the tenants. We were getting really good rents, cash flowing, and then we went to do a refinance. I believe we bought it for around like, I'm probably guesstimating around 130,000, maybe 120.
It was 127-ish. Yeah.
127, pretty precise number. Well done.
I know the exact one is 127,500, but I wasn't going to do it, but I will.
Okay, great. This guy's a savant over here, Rain Man. Jeez. Uh, so we bought it for 127.5. I want to say we put in probably 25 to $30,000 worth of work into it. And then when we went to go do the refinance, it appraised for 180,000. So we were all in for 150. It appraised for 180. And remember, because we put a 25% down payment, our loan was actually, probably only, can't do numbers right now, but probably only, let's say, low 100s to high 90s. So we're able to pull a significant cash out, buy that 3 unit that we mentioned with the pipe burst. Obviously, that's a whole story in and of itself that Sam spoke about. And then we still had a cash flowing property with good rents, with good tenants that were paying us on time. And then from there, the market kind of took off a little bit. So, of course, luck is, where opportunity meets preparation. So rising tides lift all ships. The market was kind of exploding just everywhere around the country. Home values were going insane. So because we took that opportunity to buy this duplex, we benefited from this higher equity appreciation. So we said, hey, look, what can we sell it for? We asked our real estate agent. We ended up selling it for 250,000. So a huge increase about 2.5 years later. And what we did was we did a 1031 exchange. We took that equity, deferred our taxes, and purchased a 4 unit with that same money. So now from this one deal that we put in, let's say our 25% down payment and the renovation costs, we now were able to take those 2 units and turn them into 7 units.
Awesome. Now that's a great Burr deal, right?
Yeah.
And Burr
exactly.
along with 1031 and then kind of the perfect repeat of it.
Exactly. So the reason, I mean, we've shared that story. I actually shared that story on the Bigger Pockets podcast. We've discussed it many, many times, but the reason we love it so much is because it just shows the power that recycling your money while investing in real estate has, where you can, buy and rehab the property, cash out refi, and sell to, or cash out refi and or sell to buy more property. And if you keep repeating that process, you can kind of use almost the same initial money to build a whole portfolio.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And plus, we haven't even discussed the other factors like the tax benefits and the other
Yeah.
stuff that kind of comes along with it.
Yeah.
So absolutely, real estate has a lot of power if you do it right.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, what advice would you give to our listeners who are listening to it and are fence sitters, right? They're sitting on the fence. Should I do it? Should I not do it? How should I invest? So what kind of advice would you give them?
I would start by saying definitely don't get frustrated. I think that what happens to a lot of people, especially in a competitive market right now where interest rates are high, prices are high, it's tough to find a good deal. A lot of people, they analyze, a couple deals a week for about a month. They can't find anything that works. They give up. They say, okay, I'll check back in 6 months. In those 6 months, they're not doing any work. They're not learning. They're not analyzing the market. They're not seeing any potential deals. And they're 6 months less educated than they were if they had just stayed through the entire process. And who knows, we find deals that work. So they could have found, something that works. But I think that not getting frustrated is the biggest key when first starting out. And when you're on the fence of am I able to do this? Am I not able to do this? It's easy to get frustrated. It happens to me. But at the same time, you've got to recognize that there are deals out there. You just got to keep working hard and find them.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sam. And the advice that I would give would be to take action.
Yeah.
You're going to learn more by doing than you are going to by in the books and the podcast. Those are obviously great. And we would say educate yourself first. Like we mentioned earlier, any investment is an educated guess. It's an educated risk. So it's kind of almost like a balance. You don't necessarily want to be on either extreme. You don't want to just jump right in without learning a thing, but you also don't want to get paralysis by analysis and think that you have to know every single aspect about real estate before diving in. Somewhere in the middle, you educate yourself a little bit, find a mentor, find somebody that's been doing it, that's done it before you. Sam and I are open books, so of course, reach out to us if you have any questions. And once you feel like you've got a nice solid base, don't be afraid to take action, and don't think that the first one has to be a home run.
Yep.
The first one just has to be a single, and you might get lucky. It might turn into a double, a triple, or a home run, but just get the first one under your belt, make it a single, make it worthwhile. It's not going to make you rich overnight, as we've been saying, but the experience that you're going to learn just from that first deal is going to be more than you could ever learn in any book. And a lot of the experience, we talked earlier about paying for your education. You know, we had to pay a huge bill to learn a valuable lesson. A lot of the lessons that we learn are actually free. You know, in dealing with a tenant, we may realize, oh, you know what, maybe we should have said it this way and the tenant would have been more responsive to it. Or maybe we should have communicated this way to the contractor. That didn't cost us anything. All it cost us was a phone call, and now we learned it, and then now we're better from it. So it was completely free education in that aspect because we took action and because we just kind of stayed the course.
Such great advice, Sam Joseph. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your advice and your thoughts and your journey with our listeners. We really appreciate that. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you like our episode, please like and subscribe and leave us comments. And if you like to connect with Joe and Sam, so how can our listeners get back to you?
Oh, great question. So we actually have our own podcast that is called Forced Equity, like the term that you would use to add value to a property. So Forced Equity, it's available on both Spotify and Apple. And then you can connect with both of us on LinkedIn with our full names. And then I'll let Joe give his Instagram because I don't have one.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Joe the Mortgage Man. Shoot me a DM. I'm happy to give you my number, and we can chat all things real estate. Any advice you guys need, we're happy to help. We're open books, and like we said before, we really just want to take everyone on our journey of financial freedom and building generational wealth. And we want to, everything that we learn, any mistakes that we make, we want to help other people avoid those mistakes. We want them to learn with us. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Joe and Sam, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much. This was great. This was a lot of fun.